Learn How to Change the Miracle of Personal Development by Jim Rohn. One day Mr. Shoaff said, "Jim, if you want to be wealthy and happy, learn this lesson well: learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job." Since that time I've been working on my own personal development. And I must admit that this has been the most challenging assignment of all. This business of personal development lasts a lifetime. You see, what you become is far more important than what you get. The important question to ask on the job is not, "What am I getting?" Instead, you should ask, "What am I becoming?" Getting and becoming are like Siamese twins. What you become directly influences what you get. Think of it this way: most of what you have today you have attracted by becoming the person you are today. So here's the great axiom of life: have more than you've got, become more than you are. This is where you should focus most of your attention. Otherwise, you just might have to contend with the axiom of not changing, which is, unless you change how you are, you'll always have what you've got. Income rarely exceeds personal development. Sometimes income takes a lucky jump, but unless you learn to handle the responsibilities that come with it, it will usually shrink back to the amount you can handle. If someone hands you $1 million, you'd better hurry up and become a millionaire. A very rich man once said, "If you took all the money in the world and divided it equally among everybody, it would soon be back in the same pockets it was before." It's hard to keep that which has not been obtained through personal development. Value asterisk. In my early days, there were several things that used to puzzle me. I used to wonder, why would one person be paid $2,000 a month and another be paid $4,000 a month when they both work for the same company? Handle the value. Value makes the difference. You can never create more time, but you can become more valuable. This concept of value is a primary lesson in economics. Whether you work on the assembly line or sell goods or services, you get paid for the value. Now I know that you'll spend time bringing value to the marketplace. But you don't get paid for the time, you get paid for the value, for your productivity. Mistakenly, the guy says, "I make $20 an hour." That's not true. If it were true, he could just stay home and have them send over the money. No, he doesn't get paid $20 for the hour. He gets paid $20 for the value which has been placed on the hour he works. Paying by the hour is simply a convenient way to measure anticipated value. That's why it's important to ask, is it possible to become twice as valuable and make twice as much money per hour? Is there a way for me to become 3 times or even 4 times more valuable within the same hour? And the answer is, of course. You can become more valuable if. And there is always an if, right? Life is known as the big if. Harry Truman once said, "Life is iffy. If you go to work primarily on yourself." You see, it's easy to get faked out. The guy says, "I've got 10 years experience. I don't know why I'm not doing better." What he hasn't realized is that he doesn't have 10 years experience. What he has is 1 year's experience, repeated 10 same product, work the same number of years, and come from the same background? What a puzzle. Why would one person do twice as well economically? In the area of compensation, what's the difference between $2,000 and $4,000 a month? And don't tell me $2,000. That kind of difference I could have figured out even back then. It must be a matter of time, I thought. Some people do much better because they have more time. Mary ought to do well. She's got a lot of time. If I had all of Mary's time, I could also do well. Now that's got to be dumb, right? You can't get someone else's time. A man once said to me, "If I had some extra time, I would make some extra money." I said, "Then you'll have to forget it. There isn't any more time. Where would you find any?" Listen, my friend, when the clock strikes midnight, that's it. It's all over. There isn't any more time. And if you insist on finding more than 24 hours in one day, they'll come and take you away. So if you can't create more time, what could you create that would make the difference in economic results? The answer is times. He hasn't made a single improvement, a single innovation in 9 years. Everybody wants more money. But most people look for it in the wrong places. Our guy says, I need more money. I'm going to work on my boss. Hey, I've found that bosses are notorious for not playing fast and loose with the company's till. I've never seen a boss get suddenly excited and for no reason triple somebody's wages. Some people say, we'll strike for more. The problem is that once you start striking, you'll almost always have to strike the next time the contract is up. Besides, by demanding, all you'll get will be little bitty pieces, barely enough to get by. Forget the methods that will only help you to barely get by. Listen, you can get by with a crust of bread and a pair of shoes. But that's not for you. You aren't reading this book to get the crumbs that fall off life's table. You want the feast, right? I know some salespeople who always look for the angles. They say, we'll get some of those sales books that teach the tricky sales. We'll lay it on the prospects, dazzle them with the sizzle, and grab their money before they know what happened to them. Well, I guess you can try that. But my experience shows that unless you give fair value, you'll wind up at the bottom of the economic ladder. It's not what you get by tricks that counts. It's not what you get by demanding that counts. It's what you get by productive performance that counts. I used to think that performance came from outside reasons. But I found out that real performance comes from those who have the right stuff inside them. I always looked for the answers outside. Then I learned that success and happiness are not values to pursue, they are values to develop. People often ask me, how do I develop an above-average income? The answer is, become an above-average person. How? For starters, develop an above-average handshake. Some people who say they want to succeed don't even work on their handshake. As easy as it would be to improve, they let it slide. They don't understand. Do you want to be above average? Then develop an above-average smile, develop an above-average interest in others, develop an above-average intensity to win. That will change everything. There is nothing more pointless than looking for an above-average job with above-average pay without becoming an above-average performer. I call this frustration. I used to say, one sure hope things will change. That seemed my only hope. If conditions weren't going to change, I was in serious trouble. Then I found out nothing was going to change, and I felt like I was drowning. Not long ago, I did a seminar in Honolulu for a group of oil company executives. We were sitting around a huge corporate table flanked with top executives from all over the world when one of them said, Mr. Rohn, you know some important people around the world. What do you think the next 10 years will bring? I said, gentlemen, I do know the right people. I can tell you exactly what's going to happen. When I said that, the room became very quiet. I continued, based on the people I know, and based on my life's experience, I've concluded that in the coming 10 years it's going to be like it's always been. Now aren't you glad I'm sharing this with you? It's not everyone who gets to hear this. I must admit that I said this to take some of the air out of this pompous group of big shots. But I also said it because it's absolutely true. The tide comes in, and then what? That's right. It goes out. It's been that way for at least 6,000 years of recorded history, and probably for much longer than that. It gets light and then what? It turns dark. That's the way it's been for at least 6,000 years. We are not to be startled by this anymore. If, when the sun goes down, a man says, what happened, we'd surely know that he just got here, right? Winter, a time to grow strong. First and foremost, learn how to handle winters. There are all kinds of winters. There are economic winters, when the financial wolves are at the door. There are physical winters, when our health is shot. There are personal winters, when our heart is smashed to pieces. Wintertime. Disappointments. Loneliness. That's how the blues were written. So the big question is, how do we handle the winters? Some people go to the calendar, tear out the month of January, and pretend it isn't there. but that's the childish approach. It solves nothing. Let me tell you what mature people do: they get stronger. They get wiser. They get better. Not a bad idea to use the winter for personal development. Before I understood this, I used to spend my winters looking for summers. I didn't understand. Then, finally, when I was going through a sales slump, Mr. Shove said, "Don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. Don't wish for fewer problems, wish for more skills. Don't wish for less of a challenge, wish for more wisdom." Since then, I can't honestly tell you that I've welcomed the winters, but I can tell you that I've used them to gear up for spring, which always comes after winter. The next season after fall is right again. And pray tell, how often does winter follow fall? Every time, without fail. For at least 6,000 years. True, some winters are long and some are short, some are difficult and some are easy. But no matter what, they always come after fall. It isn't going to change. Sometimes you can figure it out, sometimes it's a puzzle. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it's a disaster. Sometimes it sails along, sometimes it gets all tied up in knots. You see, it's not going to change. After 6,000 years of recorded history, life is a mixture of opportunity and difficulty. That's the way it is. The guy says, "Well then, how will my life change?" And the answer is, your life will change only when you change. Whenever I speak, whether I address business executives or high school kids, my message is always the same: the only way it gets better for you is when you get better. Better is not something you wish, it's something you become. The seasons of life **. Here are two phrases I want you to consider. The first is, life and commerce are like the seasons. The second is, you cannot change the seasons, but you can change yourself. Now, with these two phrases as guides, let's take a look at the seasons of life and how you can best handle them. Confuse you. If you want to look good in the fall, this is the time to plant the seeds. In fact, we all have to excel at one of two things. Either we become good at planting in the spring, or we learn how to beg in the fall. So get busy in the spring. There is just a handful of springs for each of us. The Beatles wrote, "Life is so short." And for John Lennon on the streets of New York, life was extra short. Summer, a time to take care. Learn to nourish and protect your crops all summer. You can bet that as soon as you've planted, the insects and weeds will try to destroy your crop. And they will succeed, unless you prevent them. Part of succeeding is learning to protect what you've created. And that's the greatest lesson of summer. Here are two truths you'll learn during your summers. First, you'll learn that all good will be attacked. Don't press me for the reason. I don't know why. But I do know that it's true. Every garden will be invaded. Not to understand this is naive. Second, you'll learn that all values must be defended. All values, social, political, marital, commercial, must be defended. Every garden must be tended all summer. Unless you defend what you believe in, come fall you'll have nothing left. Fall, a time to take responsibility. Fall is the season where we reap the results of our springs and summers. Maturity can be defined by our ability to take full responsibility for the crops we have tended, either bountiful or meager. I went through the whole litany: the government, taxes, prices, everything. He listened patiently as I went through it all. When I was finished, he peered at my list for a few moments. Finally, shaking his head, he said, "There's only one thing wrong with your list. You ain't on it. Spring, a time to take advantage. Learn to take advantage of spring. What a great place for spring to be, right after winter. Opportunity follows difficulty. Expansion follows recession, just like clockwork. God is a genius. Spring is the time to take advantage. Make a note of these two words. Take advantage. Don't let the balmy weather. Accepting full responsibility is one of the highest forms of human maturity and one of the hardest. It's the day you pass from childhood to adulthood. Learn to welcome fall without apology or complaint. Without apology if you've done well, and without complaint if you've not. It's not easy, but it's the mature thing to do. I used to have a lot of problems in this area, back in those early days. Just in case anyone asked, I used to carry with me a list of the reasons I wasn't doing well. My list, which I predictably called reasons for not doing well, included lots of alibis. I blamed the government. The government was at the top of my list. I blamed taxes. Look what you've got left after they take everything out. I blamed prices. You walk into a supermarket with $20 and come out with half a bag of groceries. I blamed the weather. I blamed the traffic. I blamed my car and the car manufacturer. I blamed my negative relatives, they are always putting me down. I blamed my cynical neighbors. I blamed the community. Hey, I had lots of good reasons for not doing well. At least I thought I did. Mr. Schoaf was very kind, but he was also blunt. One day he looked up at me and with a quizzical expression on his face asked, "Jim, just out of curiosity, tell me why you haven't done well up to now." Excellent question, right? Well, so that I wouldn't look bad, I decided to run through my list. How I ever had the nerve I'll never know, but I did. Everyone's got his or her story. Someone says, "Yes, but you don't understand the disappointments I've had." Come on. Everyone has disappointments. Disappointments are not special gifts reserved for you. The question is, what are you going to do about them? Afterward, I quickly tore up my list of reasons for not doing well. Then I got a fresh piece of paper and put one word across the top, me. There's a Negro spiritual that says it all. It's not my mother nor my father nor my brother nor my sister, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. I used to blame everything outside me for my lack of progress until I found that my problem was inside. It's not what happens that determines the outcome. What happens, happens. And it happens to everybody. Two brothers have an abusive, alcoholic father. One becomes a criminal, the other a judge. The same event, different results. How can that be? It's because it's not what happens, but rather what you and I do about it that matters. Anything can happen, right? I've heard all the stories, I've been one of these stories. We could all tell war stories for days on end. Have you heard of Murphy's Law? Murphy has this law that says, if anything can go wrong, it will. And it does. I, too, have fallen out of the sky many times, once, to the tune of $2 million. Devastating. It took me a while to get over that one. Now I admit that to some people the couple of mil isn't all that much. But it was all I had. That's a lot, any time you lose all you've got. There was a time when once you ran out of money and got to zero you were through. Heck, today they'll let you whistle by zero on borrowed money. These days they'll bury you with credit. Self-imposed limitations asterisk. To be successful we must all work to eliminate those self-imposed limitations that are stunting our personal development. And no matter who you are, there are 3 self-imposed limitations you have to contend with. Let me tell you about them. The first limitation is procrastination. Procrastination is especially dangerous because of its accumulating nature. When we put off doing some minor task, it doesn't seem to be all that important. And if we let a few things slide during the day, it doesn't seem like such a bad day. But let enough of those days pile up and you have the makings of a disastrous year. Blame is another self-imposed limitation. At one time or another all of us have blamed someone for something. We have had long training in this self-imposed limitation going back to a certain fruit garden where the man said, "It was the woman. She got me into this." And the woman blamed the serpent. Why do we point fingers instead of looking within? The ego strives to defend itself. Therefore, when we blame outside forces we don't have to face our own weaknesses and failings. This must have been my reason for keeping my infamous list of reasons. One of my favorite items on the list was the high cost of everything. One day, after some inane statement I made about the cost of an item, Mr. Schoaf cut me short. "Listen, Jim," he said, "cost is not your problem. It's not that it costs too much. The problem is that you can't afford it." And he was right. It's never the fault of it. If you keep shifting responsibility to it, you'll always be broke and disillusioned. You'll never earn enough. But when you start thinking in terms of me instead of it, you'll experience a surge of personal growth and income. Excuses, the third self-imposed limitation, is a close relative of blame. Guess how many excuses exist? Right, millions. And people create a million more in the course of their lives. In fact, people go to tremendous lengths to avoid facing the truth, which is that they are responsible. I guess they'd rather create a million excuses than create $1 million. You can't have both. So here is the fundamental question you must answer. What are you going to do, starting today, to improve yourself? It really boils down to this: if you don't get rid of some of your own self-imposed limitations, the next 5 years will be about the same as the last, except that you'll be 5 years older. But by taking responsibility and getting rid of your self-imposed limitations, you can, instead, become 5 years better. Now, doesn't this sound more exciting? There are many who have little faith in their own ability. They ask themselves, what am I capable of doing? What can I do to make a difference in how my life turns out? Let me first give you the broad answer to these questions. You can do the most remarkable things, no matter what kinds of winters life throws your way. People can rise to unbelievable heights when called upon. A woman lifts a 2-ton car to save her child. A man survives starvation and disease in a concentration camp because he dreams of seeing his family. Immigrants start their new lives by washing dishes and within 5 years, by scrimping and saving, own their own thriving businesses with scores of native-born on their payroll. Remarkable. Human beings can do remarkable things because they are remarkable. You and I aren't amoeba, fish, birds, or dogs. We can turn nothing into something, pennies into fortune, disaster into triumph. In contrast, when a dog starts with weeds, he ends up with weeds. The reason? He's just a dog. He doesn't have the ability to create. So accept the fact that you are remarkable. Thrive on your uniqueness. Reach down inside yourself and bring out more of your remarkably human gifts. They are there, waiting to be discovered and used. Once you bring out all your gifts, you can change anything you need to change. If you don't like how it is for you now, change it. If it isn't enough, change it. If it doesn't suit you, change it. If it doesn't please you, change it. Remember, you can change all things for the better when you change yourself for the better. After all, you aren't just a plant or an animal, completely dependent on instinctive behavior. You are a human being, a most remarkable creation. You and I are too sophisticated to think that we can change simply by reading this bit of philosophical insight. It will take lots more than that. What will it take? Perhaps I should first tell you what isn't going to do it. Some people will tell you, enthusiasm makes all the difference. We hear a lot about enthusiasm these days. The old cliché perseveres. In the typical sales meeting, one still hears it being chanted in staccato unison by a chorus of bleary-eyed salespeople. I also found out that kids can do remarkable things, that is, if they have remarkable things to do. Just get them away from the TV and challenge their minds and bodies, they will grow to be remarkable people. I've also discovered that if they don't be.end. Thursday side out is .tick. You must feel end. Thursday side out is .tick. But, you see, enthusiasm by itself won't help. I'm sorry. After you have leaped about, jumping and shouting, there are still some things waiting for you to do. And unless you do them, things simply won't change. A man can get all excited about lifting 200-pound weights until he gets to the gym. Then he needs a new kind of excitement, long-term excitement that will keep him in training until he can lift the 200 pounds. We call this kind of excitement discipline. Frankly, discipline is the only thing that will do it. It is the only vehicle for real progress. If there is one thing to get excited about, it's discipline. Get excited about your ability to do the necessary things for growth. That's true excitement, not just hopeful panic. Asterisk how to change asterisk. No one understands as I do the inherent difficulty in changing old and persistent habits. But habits begin to change when we begin to change our perceptions. Most of us don't experience a huge cataclysmic transformation. No, for most of us change comes as an evolutionary process of almost imperceptible changes. We just keep nudging ourselves in the right direction, forming one or two better habits here and there, until finally we realize we have turned around a major area of our life.